Welcome to the Oroville City Council meeting of August 16th, 2022, where we are reconvening from closed session where direction was given but no action was taken. Will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Halley. We vote to adopt the agenda, please.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, moving on to presentations and proclamations. We have one this evening from Branding Oroville. Presentation by the North Place Branding Team.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Wes Irvin, city planner. As you know, on April 19th, this council approved a contract with North Star Branding. The word star is omitted from the agenda. I apologize for that. Place branding to, and I quote, develop and implement a sustainable and strategic marketing and branding plan addressing the attraction, expansion, and retention of tourists and businesses. So this week, Ed Barlow, Anita Carter, and Roberto Munoz, they're a team of 3 experts from North Star. They've been in town touring, meeting with folks, and learning about this city, its geography, and more importantly, its people. So tonight, they will present a brief overview of the project as it stands to date and what their plans are.
Mayor, Council, Ed Barlow here with North Star, my colleagues Anita and Roberto with me this week, and then the rest of our team will also be working on this project. So you're seeing 3 of us this week, but a full team working on this project on Oroville's behalf. And so we're excited to share a little bit about our process. We've seen great things, talked to great folks already today and yesterday, and we'll be here this week doing more of the same. And let's see, I didn't mess that up. All right. Well, we are a community branding firm. We work all over the country. We've worked with close to 250 different communities, municipalities, downtown cities, counties, towns, CVBs or tourism organizations, chambers, economic development organizations. So you can, I think we've got 5 states left that we haven't worked in, but we've enjoyed our time. As you can see, lots of dots in California. So just a few places over that 22-year tenure that we have worked with. Some you may recognize, some others I'll talk a little bit more about your neighbor at the other end of the valley in Bakersfield. But at North Star, we like to say your brand is what people say about you when you're not around. So it's about your reputation. Is it accurate? Is it as far-reaching? What do people know? What do they get right? What do they get wrong? And so we're out to uncover that. We're not going to create a brand for you. We're going to uncover it. And so if branding is what they say about you when you're not around, branding is what you can do about that. How can we affect that reputation or correct it or enhance it? But it has a branding problem. Branding does. A lot of people think of it just as a logo and a line. Those are certainly creative tools and creative outputs of a process like this, but it goes far beyond that. So nobody is going to make a decision on where to visit or where to take business or where to live, based on a logo or a line. It may create some interest, but it's not going to do all of that for us. So I'll take you back to maybe marketing or business classes that you have. So the 4 P's of marketing that you may recall: product, place, price, and promotion. So a community, a place, doesn't have control of much of this, maybe a little bit of control on promotion, but we have uncovered through our experience 4 other P's of community branding or community marketing, and it's politics, 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 politics. But it's actually passion. So we're going to uncover all of those passionate voices through our research process, both within the community and from the outside looking in to see what people have to say about the community. And so why should a community do this? What's the value? What's the importance? It can unify residents about what the community stands for. I've done this for close to 15 years and have enjoyed watching communities go through a process like this. We're uncovering the good, the bad, and the otherwise through this research process. But it gives people permission to believe or maybe believe again in their community. But branding is also helpful in positioning a community. You want to attract interest and investment from visitors and new residents and businesses. It can certainly contribute to that. And then it can also professionalize municipal efforts or organizational efforts. So you don't want your brand to just be city-driven, but that's an important part of a community brand, is being sure that the municipal administration is communicating in a cohesive and consistent and professional manner. So that can be an outcome of this. And so we find that communities that will go through this kind of thoughtful process to get at what is distinct, and that comes through this research, are more competitive, more effective, more successful if they can identify that distinction, or what we call a strategic DNA statement. And so we'll talk a bit about that in just a little bit, but we're a research firm, so we value other people's research as well. And so this is some research done on some European cities. And so the impact is wide and broad. It's sometimes hard to measure, but pride in a city is certainly one of those. Consistent and coherent development for a community, high returns on real estate, infrastructure, and inviting people with events, and can have a positive impact on jobs in the community, investment, visitor appreciation, and word-of-mouth promotion. So our process, our approach, again, we're going to uncover what is distinct. We're not here to tell you who you are, and what's important is we can't tell you to be something you're not. And so we will uncover that distinction through that research process. Part of our goal, or one of the outcomes of this, is to get at stakeholder consensus. There's a lot of outreach, a lot of education throughout the community through a process like this to bring folks along as we're gathering that input. And then we will move into a part of the process where we activate that distinction with creative tools. A logo and line can be a result of that, but also how to implement that with parks, with city departments, with economic development, downtown, nonprofits, schools, all aspects of Oroville. So if you're talking to somebody and you want to explain, well, what is North Star really doing? Well, there's two ways. You can explain it yourself, or we actually have a educational website for you, brandingoroville.com, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But our process looks like an X. You can draw an X on a piece of paper, or looks like an hourglass. So we're going to spend about 3 months doing thoughtful research on behalf of Oroville within the community, but also externally, getting that external perception. What do people know? What do they not know? What do they get right? What do they get wrong? What do they not quite understand? And so after 3 months of research, we're going to come back and present that. And we will then make a strategic recommendation, that DNA statement, what is really, truly, honestly, authentic Oroville. The bottom half of that hourglass, my colleague Anita will lead that creative process. And foundational creative tools are a part of that. So that's just past the neck of that hourglass, but it widens out. We want that strategy to be meaningful and relevant all across Oroville and to all of its audiences. So I'm not going to read this to you, but I'll ask you to read it, and then we'll talk about it in just a minute. your neighbor to the south. So this is not North Star's work. This was a lot of passionate folks in Sacramento coming together, wanting to communicate on behalf of they called it a brand-a-palooza was their process, or what they called this sort of workshop effort. And this was the result of that. And so would you know where to, if that is your distinction or if that is your strategy, would you know where to go with that? What does that tell you about Sacramento? There's a lot going on, and it's not very specific. And what's important is what's missing. So it doesn't even say anything about being the capital of the 5th largest economy in the world. And so you're setting, what's that?
It's a word salad.
Yes. And so the essence of strategy, that strategic DNA, can be sacrificed. And so we worked with Sacramento. We did some research for them. They just did that first part of that hourglass. And so essentially their distinction, being the capital of California, setting policy for the 5th largest economy, having UC Davis, the premier agricultural academic institution. They're planning an institute right off of downtown called World of Food. So our recommendation, it was actually a bit longer than this, but essentially that distinction, it's shaping the world's relationship with food. So you would know how to go and how to communicate that sort of distinction. So again, the essence of strategy is sacrifice sometimes. And so just want to share a few examples, some visuals. Now, when we come back the next time and share the research, it's just research, data, data, data. We'll be data geeks all about Oroville and share what everybody had to say. And it may surprise you, it may not. It may confirm some things that you thought. When we get to the neck of that hourglass, it may not be a revelation. You may be, that's us. But exactly how we articulate that may be a surprise. But this is in Tempe, Arizona, where you may be familiar with Arizona State University. And so they wanted to keep their logo, but they wanted to update it. So we made it a little more dynamic for them. Their distinction, it's not just Arizona State University, which was the #1 school for innovation with Stanford and MIT right behind them at the time of this project, and they've stayed in that top ranking consistently. And so you can see no tagline is going to tell your story. You want to get to that distinction, this place of innovation, but making waves in the desert is a way to articulate that. So it has to be based on that strategy first, and then get to that compelling message. And the city itself has a history of some impressive innovation. So their innovation is not just tied to Arizona State. Here is Columbus, Indiana. This was a project many years ago, started as tourism, but became community-wide and economic development. And so you can see that they brought in lots of different partners. But unexpected, unforgettable, they are a small community in Indiana, but are known for their architecture. It's where Cummings Engine is based, and they funded a lot of that as far as some of that architecture. But you can see the chamber, the visitor center, the arts, all building off of that same mark, but not doing it exactly the same. And you can see that Leading Locator magazine, Area Development Magazine, they were top ranked, I think it was 2013. So North Star certainly doesn't take credit for that, but it shows the importance of coming together and working together to articulate a distinction for a place as an entire community. And so how do we move from that DNA statement for a community to that compelling, competitive message? And so we're going to visit Bakersfield down in Kern County. I don't have to usually show that. I don't have to show this map to you. You're very familiar with California. So just right there on top of Los Angeles County. So some images from from this place. They have lots of resource extraction, agriculture, the space, and the Mojave Air and Spaceport, China's Weapon Naval Air Station. And so in doing the research and talking to folks in Bakersfield, so you can see that this statement, this DNA at the neck of the hourglass, is never going to fit underneath a logo, not creative language. But we uncovered not only that giving ground with the resource extraction or the agriculture, but it also communicated the people in the community and the generosity and the nonprofits and all of this aspect that was a little more distinct here in Bakersfield than we had seen other places. So again, not creative language. And then looking at Kern County. So Kern County has to reflect all that Bakersfield is plus the rest of the county. And so we found that given that grounded community, the generous community support across the county, the agriculture, the air and spaceport, all of that came together with where California is both grounded and boundless. And so that distinction coming through strongly through the research. So creative output, Anita and the team, a lot of thought going into this. So you can, one thing you may recognize from Bakersfield is Bakersfield sound. They did not want to just be that. They wanted to enhance that. How can that be meaningful and relevant as they talk about business? And so this is a place that's a little bit more affordable for certainly Southern California. And so people were promised, in Bakersfield that you can buy more house. There is more opportunity. And so the sound of something better. So you take something that is authentic, you add to that message. And so again, a tagline, not telling your whole story, but hopefully making folks curious. And a little nod to that music with the music staff, the guitar sort of pick inspired mark there. You see grounded and boundless showing up as a compelling tag for Kern County, and that logo doing exactly that. Those ascenders and descenders in those letters are grounded, but they are also boundless, breaking that upper plane. And so you can see how they put it to work from economic development folder there on the right. You've got agricultural and music in that ad. For Bakersfield, they've used it in their airport, through their social media, all across the community, and have had great success. And so the county, the chamber, this was actually a chamber-driven event, driven project, but with the city and the county economic development. So bringing folks together, the byproduct of that is working together. And so that is a beneficial example for lots of communities. Branding is intangible, hard to measure. Luckily, we are building benchmarks through the research, and so there will be some ways to measure your success a year or two after implementing your new brand. And so we'll use those benchmarks that come from this research, but you can see how some other communities, whether it is the average revenue per room for hotels increasing, or website hits, or job creation, or community pride and resident advocacy using a net promoter or brand barometer score. That will be part of the research we do on your behalf. Lots of ways to measure, and branding is not the only thing that certainly has affected these results, but these communities looking at their branding effort as part of reaching these results or the return on investment. Just wanted to share a quick example of sort of before and after on a couple of communities. As you bring partners in to this effort, you want to communicate as consistently and cohesively. So Sioux Falls, South Dakota had lots of different entities that came together and were like, we need to communicate a little more consistently and cohesively. And so the creative output of that process, so they all used a similar mark. Color gave them some distinction. You could see experience, a little more whimsy to that. Anita and the team developed a way for Experience Sioux Falls to have a little extra distinction there. And then another example, if I can advance, there we go. Some places refer to their before shots as kind of logo soup. Does it look like it's coming from the same place? Does it have a lot of the same type or color? Are you presenting a consistent and cohesive message? For York, Pennsylvania, you might say no, or they said no. And so they worked with their community foundation because lots of folks were interested in rebranding. They brought them all together. And so lots of distinction here, but still looking like a cohesive family of logos and working together. So that subtle message of, well, that town looks like they talk to each other and they cooperate. They've worked together. They've presenting a united front. So that's a quick overview of our process. I'm happy to answer any questions. We're excited to be underway. We're listening to lots of folks while we're here. We'll continue with our research internally. Roberta will be drafting soon a community-wide survey. Again, we will promote that through brandingoroville.com. Folks can go to that today and register for a reminder so that they'll be sure that when it is available, they get a reminder. They have that link, can absolutely share their input that way. They can sign up for updates on the process, how to get involved as a brand ambassador during the process, but also after the project completes. Any questions for us? Or the team?
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have any questions from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speaker cards on this item.
Do we have any questions from the dais? Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm looking forward to the process, and we're going to be much more fun than Bakersfield. I know.
Excellent.
I lived in Bakersfield.
Okay.
And those pictures, the air is never that clear. And the other part, and they drink our water. I think they get 22% of their water from Lake Oroville.
Okay.
So we're definitely a step above.
Excellent.
So we're looking forward to the process. Thank you.
All right.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to spend the morning with the team and along with our team, and I am really appreciative of the work you guys do and the amount of. I think what's different is because we've tried marketing in the past, and it's been vague and unsuccessful. And I'm encouraged and hopeful with this team and with what I've seen from you guys so far, because it is so based in research and authenticity and really getting to the core of our community. And so I'm really encouraged. I'm excited for what you guys are doing, and I also encourage everyone to participate in opportunities whenever they can, because if we don't give good feedback, if we aren't being transparent with what our experiences are, then they won't get an authentic message and it won't roll out the way that we're hoping it will. So I'm really encouraged, and I thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the dais? Well, having none, thank you very much for
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, moving on to public communication. This is the time for citizens to speak on non-agenda items.
Mr. Mayor, we have two speakers. Our first speaker is Don Blake.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm Don Blake. According to published reports, the Oroville Rescue Mission is working with city staff, and has been for some time, to seek federal grants to establish Mission in Esperanza, a low-barrier harm reduction pallet shelter facility in Oroville. I have long wondered where the requirement that a low-barrier shelters are prohibited from requiring participation in 12-step programs, where that came from. Now I know. Last Friday, after I delivered materials to you folks, I received copies of 2 contracts from the city of Chico, between the city of Chico and the Jesus Center of Chico, for the setup and initial operations for the pallet shelter in Chico. I provided copies of those contracts to each of you and to the city attorney. They provide in part as follows at Exhibit F, page F1, paragraph F. Consultant agrees that funds provided under this agreement will not be utilized for inherently religious activities prohibited by 24 CFR, that's Code of Federal Regulations, Section 570.200J. Receipt of shelter services shall not be contingent upon individual participation in any type of religious activity. The prohibition against 12-step programs does not come from an act of Congress. It doesn't even come from an opinion by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal. It comes from unelected, well-paid Washington lawyers who spend their careers drafting rules for the transformation of America. 12-step programs are faith-based, and for very many people, they work. So is it wise to kick those programs, to kick God to the curb for the purpose of bags of shiny silver coins whose those bureaucrats hold out to communities like Chico in exchange for compliance? I don't think so. I'm asking the council to do the following things. Now, I met with Jackie, the city clerk, before the meeting started. I filed a request for public records on August 4th, and that's in a copy of it.
Time.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes is up, sir. Councilmember Smith looks like he has a comment for you, though.
I have a question, basically. I read your documentation that you submitted to us, and I'm just trying to understand, is your challenge with just the general services provided, you know, the pallet shelter services, those types of things, or is it specific to the Oroville Rescue Mission providing those services? I wasn't thoroughly clear, if I'm making myself clear. I just kind of understand kind of where you're coming from. Yeah, so it's just a pretty simple question. Are you opposed to the concept of providing those services as a community, or is it that you're opposed to the Oroville Rescue Mission providing those services?
Neither. As I've indicated my materials to you and the contracts I gave to you today as a third submission I've made to each of you, if there's a need for greater homeless shelter services, that's wonderful. But the low barrier harm reduction model is not for the benefit of the homeless. It's not kind, it's not wise. What it does is create a municipal bureaucratic structure to manage the homeless. It's the employees of that structure who have good jobs, benefits, and retirement plans. It's not the homeless. With all the money being spent on homeless people in this state, they ought to be having Eggs Benedict every morning, and they ought to be having rib steak for dinner every night. But they're not. They're in a subsistence level of existence, and the only ones who are financially benefiting are the lawyers who are drafting these damned agreements and the city employees who are getting permanent jobs in managing it.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, number one, the Oroville Rescue Mission folks have given about 3 different models of what it is they want. I think this council should hold a public meeting, have those folks come down and state just exactly what it is they want. I think you should direct, and I've met with the city clerk, she's going to provide the information I requested in the public records request. But I think you should advise city staff that if they're working on grant applications right now, they need to pause that until there's a full public hearing to describe what it is that what it is that Oroville Rescue Mission wants, how much money they want from it, what agency they're applying for their grant, and have the city attorney explain what the consequences are of that grant application. Because I am concerned that the Chico City Council was not properly advised by their attorneys as to what it was they were getting into when they agreed to the settlement agreement.
Okay.
So
I
what-
appreciate your answer. I don't want to continue because we need to cut this, but I appreciate that answer. It's a little bit longer than I was looking for, but kind of gives me, and you and I maybe need to talk off.
I'm available.
So-
You've got my contact information. I'm available to any of you who want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because I think it is a substantial issue for this community. I think Chico residents are going to find out that over the next 5 years, which is a required period for that settlement agreement, they're going to have to come up with a whole bunch of money to satisfy the bureaucratic needs of the program managers.
Mr. Blake, thank you, sir.
You bet.
Our next speaker is Bill Spear.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. That was 7 folds and come up to 128. And the reason I did that is because I'm going to pray this evening for our city, but just to acknowledge, what has happened in our city. I see our mayor's running for re-election, and I thank you for your service and our vice mayor and what you guys have done in a short amount of time. It was not very long ago we were in a deficit and talking about bankruptcy. And now we have an abundance. We've added to staff, and I would say it's at least 7-fold. But I'm gonna pray for a 100-fold for our city. I have a rebranding for Oroville too that I would like, and it's to drop the L instead of the city of gold, make it the city of God, and it'll fix all of the issues and problems. So, Father God, I thank you for your word, and in your word it says about the fertile ground of the seed that is sowed. It says some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. And I thank you for what you have done in our city when it looked like we were going to go down the wrong path and start selling drugs and ruin the brand. Lord, you have led us down the path of righteousness. And I pray that you would continue, Lord, in this next election, Lord, that you would raise up godly candidates that are seeking after you, Lord, that you would be the brand over our city, that you would continue to bless our police force, continue to bless our firefighters, continue to bless all the public servants, continue to bless our city council, and as they pour out, Lord, bless their families and give them that supernatural wisdom. And with this new batch of people running, we pray that you would seat. It says there's no authority except that which you have established. And so we look to you to fill the seats, to put the people in that you want there, and that you would use our city for your glory, that you would make us a city on a hill, a light on a shelf. We love you. We praise you. We give you all the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last of the public speakers on non-agenda items.
Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar. Looking for a motion to, anybody else want anything pulled?
I move that we adopt the consent calendar exempt 4, 7, and 8.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Councilmember Hatley, you pulled items number 4, 7, and 8. Do you care to speak on item number 4, please?
No, I just wanted to vote on it separately, aside from the consent calendar.
Do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public comments on any consent calendar items.
Do we have any comments from this dais? Looking for a motion to adopt item number 4.
So move.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second. Thompson? Okay. Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 no.
Councilmember Hatley, you also pulled item number 7 from the consent calendar. Do you wish to speak on that, sir?
Again, no.
Do we have any comments from the dais? Do we have any comments from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speakers on this item.
Looking for a motion to adopt item number 7 on the consent calendar.
So move.
Second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 no.
Councilmember Hatley, you also pulled item number 8 from the consent calendar. Do you wish to speak on this item, sir?
Nope.
Do we have any comments from the public on this item, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any speakers on this item.
Do we have any comments from this dais? Having none, I'm looking for a motion to adopt item number 8 on the consent calendar.
So moved. I'll second.
Motion carries with 5 yeses and 2 nos.
Okay, moving on to regular business, we have one item, item number 11, request for designation of voting delegate and alternates for League of California Cities Annual Conference. Do we have somebody that wishes to speak on this? Apparently we lost Mr. LeGrone. Mr. Belser, will you speak on this?
I'm happy to do that. Council members, the League of California, the conference of the organization formerly known as the League of California Cities is now called, I think, Cal Cities, is coming up in Long Beach the first week of September. I believe it's 6, 7, and 8 of September. The city has an opportunity to identify a voting delegate for the bylaws of Cal Cities. If anybody would like if anybody who's going would like to be identified as someone who's authorized by the council to vote on those items related to the bylaws. I believe the bylaws are the only things that they are asking for votes on. That's my memory, but don't quote me on that. But anyway, if any member of the council is going and would like to be identified as a voting delegate on behalf of the council, now would be the time to give that authorization to them. If more than one individual is going, you can have someone with primary authority and then someone as a backup in case that individual doesn't make it to a meeting or isn't able to go to one of the meetings that's down at the league. It is down in Long Beach this year. Again, I believe it's September 6, 7, and 8.
7, 8, 9.
7, 8, 9. Okay.
Close.
Pretty close. Going from memory on the fly there, not bad, right, for a 53-year-old man. Wow. Anyway, so I am. I don't know. I'm just a little bit older than Bill. Anyway, so if any member of the council is going, let us know, and then if anyone would like to have that authority, great. This is not required, but if you'd like to give that authority to someone, you can.
Part of what goes on there, Mr. Mayor, too, additionally, just to add to Mr. Huber's comments, is that there is, no, I mean, I had to expand upon them. Additionally, things that will be done by the voting delegate is help shape and form the advocacy that the League of Cities takes each year as they represent the League of Cities to different various legislators and groups. So there is a component of that. There's also a lot of training that is made available on very diverse topics, a lot of topics that may or may not be relevant to our city, but certainly is training that you would not get locally. So there is quite a plethora of things down there for council persons to learn from.
A lot of drinking, carrying on.
There could be that too. Okay. I mean, it depends on you. You can shape your own experience.
Well, Councilmember Smith and I went to this a few years ago. I didn't get a lot out of it, but he did. He absorbed a lot out of it. And then Councilmember Riggs went last year, and she did an excellent job as well, really absorbed that. But so, well, we'll let the council members talk, and then we'll decide if we want to go and how many we want to go, because I am not interested.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just throw in just one more quick thing, that there is also a area where different vendors and individuals are there to put on display their products and things. When Councilperson Smith went, he brought back a couple different flyers, which resulted in the purchase of a couple pieces of very useful equipment that made our staff more efficient. Councilperson Riggs brought back information regarding marketing companies and things like that that assisted us in finding someone to help us with our branding and marketing. So it is valuable in that way as well.
But you didn't like any of the tools I brought back.
No, not yet.
Vice Mayor Thompson, you wish to speak on this? Do we have any comments from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any speakers on this item.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. I've also been to this conference. From my understanding, they rotate back and forth between Sacramento and Bakersfield, so my recommendation is that we skip this one, and if we want to send somebody, do it when it's closer and more affordable. There's great tools that are there in regards to the ones you mentioned, but other than that, it's, in my opinion, very one-sided politically in its representation and its pushing of different agendas, so I'm not too hot on this entity.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you. The league has been a valuable training tool for elected officials for dozens and if not decades of terms. I certainly would recommend anyone on this council to go. It is a huge training opportunity, and even in my case, I learned about a word called Brownsfield. I didn't know what the hell a Brownsfield was. The end result of that first meeting was about $4 million brought to Oroville. So you never know until you hatch the egg. You got to go down there and find out what's available. And I don't have the time to go this year, but I certainly would support any member or a couple members to go, because this is the first time I think it's face-to-face now instead of virtual. And face-to-face communication is highly 100% effective. So I would recommend anyone that want to go, and I'll support anybody.
Councilmember Smith.
And just add my 2 cents. I think a lot of what they provide there is good for city staff. I think a city like Ms. Nevers, someone like that in our city, I think it would make sense given the types of presentations that are there, where this is your job 40 hours a week. I think it would be very worthwhile. Maybe because of cost restraints and all that, maybe not sending someone down to Long Beach, but definitely when it's more local, I would certainly advocate for some of the city staff, upper management, attending at least a portion of the conference. I think it would be worthwhile.
I'll expand on that too. When I went down there a few years ago, I personally thought it was exorbitant. In fact, Councilmember Smith and I went in our room with our separate rooms, luxurious. We went in, we both came out and said, "Man, can you believe this?" And we went over to the desk and we turned in one of our rooms and bunked up together, because we just couldn't justify that, especially when the city was in a financial crisis the way it was.
Separate beds, obviously.
Separate. One night. So, but I'm just saying that it's a very nice venue. The city's a lot more financially solvent now. I think there's some value there, but I also agree with Vice Mayor Thompson. It's very one-sided, I didn't feel connected, if you will. It was very obvious what they were catering to, and I just didn't care for it. So, Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Councilmember Smith said, that I attended last year, and it was in person last year, and I did learn a number of things from it that I thought were very helpful. But there were a number of items or workshops that I attended that I thought, oh, I wish Ms. Nevers was with me on this one. I think that that would be great. And so I would recommend that we not send any delegates to the Long Beach one this September, but expand who we send next September in the Sacramento conference.
I think the Sacramento venue could be a little different than the Long Beach venue.
I'm not going to make you go, but
yeah, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, Vice Mayor Thompson.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment of sending staff. I wouldn't even be opposed to sending Dawn this year if her schedule allowed it. Somebody like that could have firsthand experience and grab some of these tools that would be beneficial to our city would be a worthwhile to me.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I'd support that. And I just wanted to clarify, why did I say that? Because they have a lot of vendors there that support cities, from paving equipment to, radios, engineering services. There's just a plethora of, the nuts and bolts of making a city run. And sometimes there's great deals and discounts. You're able to converse with the various vendors and, and you know more than anyone, really, the needs and/or again that upper management of the city, really what we're looking at, what's coming down the pike, because you're preparing, these reports to us for then us to make that final decision. But I think having direct access to those vendors would be advantageous.
And I agree with your sentiments, and I've attended the planning conferences in the past from Cal Cities, and it's a very informative conference. They give you a heads up on Senate bills and Assembly bills that are coming down the pike that cities need to be aware of. Again, vendors that you get to meet and connect with, so I appreciate your comments, and I'd be happy to attend on behalf of the city.
I appreciate it. I have a question for Councilmember Smith. Plethora, I've never heard it pronounced that way. Is it plethora or plethora?
Well, depending on
Mr.
who's saying it.
We'll refer to the attorney on this one.
Well, I think it may fall under the, depending on, there's a famous song.
What neighborhood you're
potato,
from?
Tomato.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. So I think it ends with "Let's call the whole thing off."
Yes.
If I remember.
I will call it a draw.
So.
Well, I'm all for the waiting too. I couldn't justify Long Beach. But I'm not saying I won't vote for it if somebody wants to go, but I can't justify it. So with that, Councilmember Smith.
I was just going to ask, is there any from Mr. Lando or Mr. Legrone, any input on that, sending Ms. Nevers?
I think any training is valuable. There may be other training that's more targeted, but I think any training you can send staff to. I do like the idea, and I don't know, I haven't seen the agenda, so I don't know what's on the agenda. I don't know if this agenda is particularly worthwhile, Dawn, or not, but otherwise I think getting something more targeted in North State makes sense.
And I can review the agenda and let you know if there's enough content or courses that would benefit our community, and make the determination as well.
I heard from two council members. Councilmember Goodson, were you interested in this?
I had the opportunity of going when I first got on council, and I believe it to be very informational, very insightful, especially if you are the new kid on the block. I believe at one of the sessions, correct me if I'm wrong, was a part of your staff was in attendance? And we were able to connect afterwards. Yes, so it's valuable to a few city entities. I encourage it. It's new information. It's current. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And so you do have the opportunity to go to different venues, workshops, seminars, and things that will cater specifically to your city, especially if, we're a rural, branching out into the future of being urbanized, I would think. So, yes, and I'm in agreement with Mr. Lando. Knowledge is power, and training is everything for growth.
Councilmember Hatley, did you wish to speak on this item? Okay. All right. So where are we at with this? Vice Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. I appreciate
circular
Ms. Nevers' recommendation for her to look at the agenda and then come back to us if there's something specifically that could serve potentially our community, then we move from there. Otherwise, without seeing the agenda, we're kind of
winging it,
looking at it blind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Councilmember Riggs.
I am scrolling through the agenda, and there seems to also be a number of opportunity for training and development along housing. So Ms. Bergsten might also be interested in browsing the agenda.
Okay, so we're going to hear back from you? Yes. Underwater basket weaving?
Yes.
Okay,
Underwater basket weaving is one of my favorites. Thank you.
Okay, well, with that, we will bring it back. Now we're running out of time here, so we better have something.
Yeah,
Well, how about we might be recommending what I'm recommending, because I'm as smart as you.
there's something about great minds there, I think.
Tentatively
Yeah.
approve it?
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we tentatively approve for up to
Two.
2 staff members to attend on behalf of the council?
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that.
All right, I motion that we approve up to 2 staff members to attend the League of California Cities Conference.
I second.
Great. Now, was that what you were going to say?
Motion carries
That
with
actually is-
7 yeses.
While I didn't
and
have a
0 noes.
specific number, I actually was going to say exactly the same thing.
Okay, with that, we're going to open the public hearing at 5:37. One item for public hearing, resolution of intent to amend the Calpers contract to end unrepresented employees sharing additional costs and first reading of the ordinance.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. The item you have before you this afternoon for consideration is the adjustment of the PERS contract. Several months ago, the council approved the adjustment of the contract for non-represented employees to return to the 7% or the 9%, 7% of the employee's wage or 9% of the safety employee's wage would be deducted and sent to PERS to pay their share of the PERS cost. It was several years ago adjusted up so that because of the financial difficulties of the city. Since then, all other represented groups have had their cost reduced back to what the actual cost is, where the employee does not bear any of the cost of the city. What this item is just a resolution of the council ratifying what the council agreed to several months ago to take the employees back to paying their share and not paying any portion of the city. Again, that share is 7% for non-safety employees and 9% for safety employees.
Do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any speaker cards on this item.
Do we have any comments from the dais? Having none, I'm looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 9095.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 noes.
With that, we will close the public hearing at 5:39. We're moving on to reports, discussions, and correspondence. Council announcements and reports. Does anyone on the council have anything to announce?
I do, but my button's not working. Here we go.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. I just wanted to report out from downtown Oroville that the mile-long yard sale is approaching the Saturday of Labor Day weekend. So that'll be the yard sale essentially from the lot home into downtown and throughout our secondhand stores within downtown. And so I'd encourage you guys that if you have friends who live on Montgomery Street or are associated with a nonprofit, to participate in that activity. It's really an exciting and interesting day to be able to walk on one side and check out all the yard sales and then walk on the other side and then grab lunch downtown. It's a really nice Saturday. And then the second announcement I have is also related to downtown Oroville in that a number of months ago, sometime year before last, we received a grant from the Supplemental Benefits Fund to do some revitalization work within the Miners Alley in the downtown district. So that work is progressing, and I gave each of you guys an invitation to a project celebration occurring September 9th. So I just want to invite the community to be on the lookout for more information, but it'll be September 9th from 5:30 to 6 in the Miners Alley of downtown. So really great opportunity to learn more about the project. We'll have local historian Daniel Ballard share about the history of the alley and the vital function that it had served through the very many generations of our downtown district. And then we'll also do some sharing about the vision moving forward for the alley and additional work occurring September 9th. It's a Friday night.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes, thank you. I want to remind everyone that we have a Salmon Festival coming up September 24th in this room at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We'll be having a meeting. So if you have any interest in Salmon Festival, vendor, otherwise, or just you want to come and participate, certainly show up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then yesterday I was in the COC meeting. There was a fairly significant announcement, and that is from the Southside Oroville Community Center. That there was an announcement that in about, I think now 11 days, the Southside Community Center will be closing escrow. The County of Butte has gifted that facility to Southside Community Center, the nonprofit that runs that. And it was a very impressive presentation they made of all the plans and ideas that they have. You might know them, the shower services that they provide, the big blue showers that run around, and there's other things that that organization does as well. So just certainly wanted to, I thought that was a pretty big gift on behalf of the County of Butte. And so I think that's certainly in the public interest. Thank you.
I would like to remind everyone that 45 years ago today, Elvis Presley had passed away. And I remember that day as clear as a bell.
Supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly I was clear as a bell.
Supposedly he died.
Oh, supposedly. I seen him at 7-Eleven playing Pac-Man. But I'd also like to congratulate Councilmember Eric Smith for winning his election unopposed in District B. So congratulations, sir. Councilmember Riggs.
Sorry. I forgot to mention that September 1st is the 12-year anniversary of Mr. Huber at the City of Oroville. So congratulations on approaching your 12-year anniversary here.
Okay, if there are no more comments from the dais, future agenda items, anyone?
I have a future agenda item.
Councilmember Pittman.
Go ahead. You start first. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You're not in the queue, sir.
Yeah, in the monthly reports, one of the things that have been asked of me, and I don't really know. So what I'd like to see is, can we get the mileages of our city fire equipment so that we understand how much use pattern they're getting? Maybe it might be less, it might be more, but I think it would be easy to do. I believe the fuel, however we record our fuels, if we could have a mileage report on the vehicles so that we know they're using more or less, as the request I got, and I think it's reasonable that we get that information.
We'll pass that to Chief Tins and ask him to include that.
Thank you.
Mr. Belser.
I have authored a procedure manual, updated and authored a procedure manual for code enforcement, and I'm going to be presenting that to the council next meeting for your approval. It's rather lengthy.
Okay.
You probably won't be able to get through it. It'll take you a while, but just wanted to let you know.
You have 3 minutes, sir. Okay, administration reports, Mr. Lando.
Just that, as was mentioned at the last meeting, staff continues to work with actually quite a few developers in terms of interest in the community. And it's probably a 6 to 12 month process for most of these projects. But they're proceeding. So we have 4 or 5 subdivisions in the works, and potentially a major employer in the work, or actually 2.
Thank you. Ms. Bergstrom.
I have none.
Nothing. Who do we have over there, Chief?
Administrative Chief Garrett Needles. I have nothing to report for the fire department. Thank you.
Nothing to report, sir? Okay. Mr. Huber? Mr. Bell, sir?
So I just want to know that my code enforcement team continues to serve abatement warrants. We served an abatement warrant last week in Southside on a nuisance property where individuals were squatting, living in a large motorhome with no water or sewage. And what was important about this abatement warrant was that Julio Salcido, one of our code enforcement technicians, this was the first abatement warrant that he had done on his own without any type of help from me. Reached out, had all the appropriate partners there, law enforcement, the MLEs, our towing service, and it was a success, and it was nice to see him, take that responsibility and see that project through. And, the squatters have been moved on and the property's cleared. This is a property that we'd receive 3 to 4 complaints a week about with some of the drug behavior and other items that were going on there. Monday, the 15th, we held an administrative hearing here in council chambers addressing inherently dangerous dogs. We had a case that came up where a dog in Southside had bitten 2 individuals over about a 6-month period. Previously, these kind of cases just kind of went away, and it was important that we used our municipal code, went through the route using Colin Huber to get administrative hearings set to where we can ban these type of dogs out of the city. We don't have result of the hearing yet. We'll have that in writing by the end of the week. So next council meeting, I'll advise how that turned out. But these type of cases, they're very frequent in the city. We have citizens that are being bit by dogs, and nothing was really happening. Animal control was doing everything they could, but now incorporating the city and code enforcement and getting through the admin hearing, we have a little more teeth in the game to control that. I've reached out to...
Before you move on, can I piggyback on that for just a minute? We may have also some recommendations for some ordinance modifications to streamline that process, make it a little more seamless, a little bit easier to navigate, and ultimately more efficient, reducing costs for the city.
And then I've reached out to the Housing and Homeless Administrator, Donald Taylor. August 31st, we'll be introducing Ian Clement to law enforcement, municipal law enforcement, code enforcement. He's going to be our housing navigator. We're going to understand how we're going to work together on how the program's going to proceed. He'll be here 20 hours a week in our city providing housing navigation services to homeless people or people that are at risk of homelessness. And then we received our second of 4 vehicles for code enforcement. It's due to have graphics put on it next week. We'll press that into service. The last 2 should be here in September. And that's about it.
Great.
I have a question for
Councilmember Goodson.
Thank you. So you made mention of a motorhome in Southside that was removed. Is that the property off of Lower Wyandotte?
Yes, it is.
This was the house that was previously, it burned, correct?
Yes, it was.
And so that debris was cleared, and it was my understanding, I'm just asking for clarification purposes, was the owner, because you said there were squatters on the property, right? Was that not the owner?
Owner was there along with multiple other subjects.
Okay.
That they couldn't control or get off of the property.
All right. Thank you for clarification.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. I've noticed that the fencing around the burned inn has been removed. Stolen.
So I
Okay.
can comment on that as
Thank
well.
you,
I
please.
spoke to the owner a couple days ago. Matter of fact, I had City Works there today that cleaned out all of the structures. We were wanting to board it up, but it wouldn't be worth boarding up based on the condition. You would have to basically side the entire building. But I spoke to the owner. They're on their second set of security fencing. It's the second time that it's been stolen. He's working with his contractor to get that property resecured.
Okay, thank you.
Are you looking for a suspect who will fence those items? Yes, sorry, it was just lobbed out there.
It's been that kind of meeting. I've been listening to it. So.
Ruth?
I have nothing.
Dawn?
I wanted to report that the request for proposal for the Sank Park fence has been released as of last Friday, and it will be closing on September 19th. And we also have a new request for proposal for transportation art in partnership with Caltrans, and this was following our selection, or we were selected by the governor for through Caltrans to have the off-ramps at Montgomery and Oro Dam along Highway 70, the off-ramps and the on-ramps, to have new landscaping installed, drought-resistant landscaping, and the art component will be metal silhouettes, and it'll be at the discretion of the proposer to be native animals in the area or other silhouette shapes, but that has been flown and is due to close August 31st.
Thank you. Mr. Legron? Chief Legron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two quick things. The first one is that the council and community will be, or should be made aware, or would notice on the agenda that there is a police department monthly report that has been brought back so that the council and the community can review that. We're looking for thoughts and input on that about what additional information, if any, you'd like to see or what you'd like to not have on there. It is a first run at that. It's I guess a reuse of an old tool that we're just trying to bring back and keep everybody informed about what's going on. You should be able to see the proactivity of our officers. They've been very proactive lately. You should begin to start receiving the complaints about people getting too many tickets because they have picked up their enforcement in that area, and more of those are being issued to violators. The second thing that I'd like to cover quickly with the council is that on September 8th there will be a chamber dinner at the river. Tentatively, I'm going to reserve 2 tables for that. I'll be bringing an agenda item back for the council for approval. I just want to kind of get a number of those of you that may be interested in attending that, so that I know that I get adequate number of seats, and I'm assuming that each one of you would, 1 equals 2 with your significant other. So if I could just get an idea of who all would like to be in attendance for that. Again, it's September. I believe it's, just check with Councilperson Smith to make sure. I'm 90% sure it's the 8th of September. So, Mr. Pittman, would you like to go to that? I mean, if the council approves that?
One.
Okay. Councilperson Goodson?
The hospital.
I'll get back to you. Thank you.
Okay. Two. Okay, thank you. I just have an idea. Like I say, I'll be bringing this back for your approval on the 6th. I was just wanted to get a heads up right now. That way I can help them plan.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Yeah, just a question for Ms. Nevers in regards to the wall on Teal Mountain. Is there proposals or plans right now that maybe I haven't seen as far as any artwork or the fencing or
Yes,
wall?
I can actually bring that back as a presentation for the next council meeting. The Rainforest Project has been working with Modern Building, the contractor, and the subcontractor of the wall. And they have their proposal and their project description in place, so we can have them present a presentation to council as they did for the Arts Commission this last week. Yes.
Anyone else? Well, with that, we will adjourn until September 6th, 2022 at 4 p.m.
Thank you.